My name is Carol Reese. I'm not the famous Tennessee Carol Reese. I'm the average Tennessee Carol Reese. I've been a master gardener since 2003. I also attended college for 5 years and studied horticulture and plants. I'm a florist, and other than that, I have no claims to fame whatsoever. And so we're going to go over planting a cutting garden. Now, planting a cutting garden is just like planting a vegetable garden. The first thing you're going to need is 6 to 8 hours of sunshine a day. You're also going to need adequate water, adequate soil requirements, just like any other garden. The difference between planting a vegetable garden and planting a flower garden is a lot of your flowers will be annuals. Some of them will be perennials. If they are a perennial, you better make sure that your soil is prepared for years in advance. You're not going to be adding organic matter and digging it up underneath that hydrangea bed. That's just not productive. So that's where we stand with that. The gardening rules are full sun, 6 to 8 hours. Water the equivalent of 1 inch a week. Some plants need more. I mentioned hydrangea. Don't forget the main rule. Gardener's rule. I'm going to start with tulips. Tulips grow from bulbs. The time to plant them is in the fall. They like enriched soil. You want to plant your tulips 2 to 3 times the size of the bulb. So if you have a 2-inch bulb, that bulb had best be 6 inches below the soil surface. That's to protect them from cold, heat, and critters. Squirrels are going to dig them up anyways. They're going to eat them. In my menial estimation, if you plant tulips, consider them an annual, because you'll get a bloom the first year, and then the squirrels will take them away. They'll plant them someplace else, and they'll never bloom again. But if you do plant tulips, and you want to cut them and bring them into your flower garden, or bring them into your bouquet, harvest when they're 50% colored. You don't want to leave them go an indeterminate amount of time. The best way to get tulips out of your garden into your house is to either tug them so that they come away from the bulb. You can even pull the whole bulb up. It won't hurt anything because, like I said, consider bulbs, that tulip bulb, an annual. Or it'll pull out, or you can cut them. You don't need to seal them. And again, damage from rats and rodents. Tulips are edible, so you just put out a buffet. Multicolored, really attractive plant. People in the florist industry love tulips for their color and their shape and their style, similar to roses. People in the florist industry hate tulips because their stems are not manageable. They're geotaxic. You put them in at this angle, people think they're dead, but they're not. And then by tomorrow, they've righted themselves. So your arrangement is no longer. So that's little tidbits about tulips. Hyacinths, another spring flower. Beautiful shades of pinks, white, blue. There's even some cream colored hyacinths or yellow hyacinths. The smell is to die for. Hyacinths will perfume an entire yard. Drawbacks, their stems are short. So if you do have hyacinths, there's no way to make them long. So in a bouquet, you have it's got to be a short bouquet. They need a chilling period of 35 to 45 degrees for 12 weeks, or 10 to 12 weeks. And soggy soil and rodents are a danger to the bulbs. Hyacinths are short-lived, so even if you do keep them in the ground, you know, and they come back, you're looking at 4 to 5 years maximum. But from the smell aspect, they're worth it. Again, hyacinths. Narcissus, daffodils. In this area, they're known as buttercups. But they're technically narcissus. Slightly acid soil is best. In the cedar glades around here with all the cedars, chances, and all the rock, all the limestone that's coming out of the surface of the soil, chances are that your soil won't be acidic. You might have to add something to acidify the soil a little bit. It's best to get a soil test always to know what your acidity is. I use, we just had a question about organic versus inorganic. I prefer the acid-loving organic fertilizers for my things like blueberries or anything that requires acidity, a higher rate of acidity. I'm not allowed to promote one brand over the other, but there are organic fertilizers for acid-loving plants. You can get them at the plant stores, the garden stores. Again, we're right back to plant 2 to 3 times the height of the bulb, 14 to 16 weeks of chilling period. And they're not bothered by pests. I don't know if y'all know why. You know why narcissus are not bothered by pests?
They're poison.
They're poison. Not dramatically poison. You know, you can touch them, handle them, whatever. Unlike lily of the valley. Lily of the valley is very poisonous. But they are poisonous, so the squirrels will leave them alone. Take one bite and they'll go. No narcissus. Narcissus do really well around here, as you can see, because they come up in places where there used to be houses. The houses are no more, but the narcissus are still going strong. I love daffodils. Allium, I don't know if you ever considered planting allium. It's an onion. It's in the onion and garlic family. Planted in the fall, it's a bulb. The pictures of allium. I don't know if you're familiar. Alliums can get 3 to 4 feet tall, or 3 foot tall, giant purple heads. The bulbs are expensive, but they're worth every penny of it. The critters won't bother them more than a little. They'll bother them a little bit. Like most bulbs, they need good drainage. You don't want your bulb sitting in a soggy site. Plant 2 to 3 times the bulb, the depth of the bulb, 6 to 8 inches apart. Yes, ma'am.
Since we're talking about bulbs, how do bulbs do in like a raised bed?
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, they're not gonna freeze because they're not down in the ground.
Well, 6 to 8, you're still looking at 2 to 3 times the size of the bulb. So you're looking at 6 to 8 inches. So
Right.
there'll still be 6 to 8 inches worth of ground.
But it's kind of like being a pot, that's what I was wondering, you know, the freezing is not the same as being in the ground.
Yes, ma'am. You
Okay.
kind of have to put them in a container.
Okay,
The rules for containers are, when you plant in a container, when you plant in a raised bed, so that your surface of the soil is, and the bulb or the plant is closer than you would like to exterior temperatures, is you plant a plant or a bulb that is capable of living one zone higher for heat and one zone lower for color. And if you do that, then they'll be able to withstand the extremes of temperature that they feel on the outside of that container or raised bed.
thank you.
You're welcome, my pleasure. Alliums are great. These alliums come, there's allium molly, allium gene, I don't know all the new ones, those are the historic ones. You can get little bitty ones that are yellow, little bitty ones that are white. You can get medium ones, the Sphaera salant. Okay, it means brain. Looks like a little head. Looks like a head. And it's a drumstick allium. That's the common name. It's about this big. It's on a stalk like this. Or you can get the giant ones. And giant ones are so cool. When you dry the giant ones after they've lost all their color and they're sitting out there, you can spray paint them and they look like fireworks when you put them in flower arrangements, just for fun. I mean, you know, don't have anything to do that day. You go out and spray paint old flowers. Yeah. Now, people love peonies in their gardens and in their houses. Brides love peonies. We charge $16 a piece for peonies in a flower shop. That's how valuable they are. And that's well, we can go lower in season when people are bringing them in, but our season, $16 a piece, if you can get them. plant early to late varieties for continuous bloom. Peonies do really well if they're on a hill, because they're less likely to get the fungus, the downy mildew that you see on the plants. A lot of times with the especially the more modern cultivars of peony, the heads are so heavy, and even with the old cultivars, the heads are so heavy that when it rains, they just fall over. A lot of times you're going to need support. Ants on peonies are there because they exude a small amount of sugary sap at the top, and they're collecting that. They're not like opening up the top. My mother told me that. I don't think I've ever forgiven her. But she also told me that hummingbirds never sit still. Now I look at hummingbirds and think they sit still all the time. But the soil for peonies and all perennial, not perennial, woody plant, or not, they're not even woody, but all perennials that are going to come back, prepare that soil bed real good, because you're not going to be able to amend the way you will with an annual bed. No more than 2 inches deep. When you plant a peony, it comes in like a rhizome. It's a woody piece. If you bare root it, and this coming fall is when we should be planting peonies, and we should be planting bare roots. So prepare your soil, get a lot of good organic matter in there. Then put that rhizome, and it'll have little tiny green pieces coming off of it. You'll see them, little buds. Put that no more than 2 inches below the surface of the soil. It may even grow a little bit, if not the first year, then in subsequent years, and you'll see that those little buds breaking the surface of the soil as you go into winter. And you worry about them. Don't worry about them, they'll be fine. They like to be right there. They don't like to be transplanted. So as most gardeners who run around digging up things, oh, I don't like it here, oh, it's not doing well here, I'll move it. Not for peonies. You really got to think it through when you put your peony in. They don't like to be dug up. They're deer and pest resistant, and the best time to plant's in the fall. I said all that stuff. There's a single. I have a peony like that. It's single red on the outside, golden tendrils on the inside. It is magnificent. Now there's a little trick with plants like that. When you get a peony, a lot of the big plants like that, and you want them to open up further, like say you're taking it someplace and you're giving it to somebody and you want that plant to look exactly right, just put it in warm water. You want it to close up a little bit, put it in cold water. I took a peony to garden club once, and it wasn't open enough, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with garden club, everything has to be. So I took my beautiful peony and I cut it, and I put it in water, and it was not open enough, so I put it in warm water, and it opened. And I came back in the room, and it was like this. I said, oh no. So I put it in warm water, and it closed. It closed until it was like this, and I'm like, oh no, it's gotta be here. So I had to do it all over again. It's hard for me to cut my flowers and take them to garden club because they're going to tell me how they're not perfect. And when I see them growing out in the yard, they are perfect. I'm not going to cut them and take them someplace so somebody can tell me that they're not. There's your double. A lot of the doubles are typical of our old-time peonies, the things we see around quite a bit. Most of the singles are Japanese cultivars that are coming over, and they are glorious, just glorious. Iris. You can use bearded irises in arrangements if you want. You can use anything in arrangements. Please don't think that you're limited. But your bulbs are the best bet for your irises. That would not be, the bulbs do not produce bearded irises. It's more your Dutch irises. And there's also a rhizomatic, never mind, has a rhizome. That is like your Dutch iris, your things that open up wide, they don't have falls coming down. The bulbs planted in the fall, but They're so prolific, you could probably plant them anytime of the year, and they'll do okay. As long as you give them, you can plant stuff now, but you gotta water it, and water it, and water it, and water it. Colors light blue, white, yellow, and purple. Full sun, 4 inches deep. I did that wrong. 3 inches apart, don't cut the foliage. Oh, I didn't cover that. You all know that you don't cut your foliage, right? On your plants, on your flowers, on your tulips, on your daffodils, on your anything that's a bulb, don't cut your foliage. Don't tie it in knots. You just let it die back. If you don't like the look of that, put something else in front of it. What I typically do, will plant tulips, then iris, then peonies. So as the plants in the back die and get nasty looking, the plants in the front cover it. Here's your Dutch iris. That looks like a painting.
And those are the kind that you use in arrangements?
Yes, ma'am. Well, there's the kind you like you have in your yard too. I've noticed they like it kind of moist. They like a nice organic material with good water. I'm not a good waterer. I try, but I'm not. But yes, ma'am.
The type of the Dutch and all irises and some other plants that I have that like moist, I have planted them in front of where my air conditioning is,
Yes.
and put a piece of hose pipe on that pipe that comes out and bring that water out to them so that area stays moisture without me having to do extra watering.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if you, Larkspur, Delphinium, are any of you familiar? They kind of like it a little cooler than what we have here. Difficult to grow from seed. They can be grown. They're best to go get a container plant. They like cool, moist summers. I've planted Delphinium many years. I had a garden in Virginia that I planted it in, and typically I get 1 or 2 a year that would come back, and I just have to replant 1 or 2 a year. The summers in Virginia are very similar to the summers here. They don't like strong winds. Larkspur's a little bit nicer. Delphinium's got more flowers, more stuff to resist the winds. They really grow best in a greenhouse, but we can try them here. There's no harm in trying. Pinks, purples, white. They like a little bit of alkaline soil, so these limestone outcroppings would probably be good for them. And the young plants, not the old plants, the young plants are poisonous. One day I'm going to have a poisonous plant garden. I've told my fellow master gardeners this. I just think it'd be fun. Yeah, I don't think anything's poisonous. Dahlias. Dahlias are perfect flowers. They always have the perfect symmetry. Even when they're just 6 or 7 petals, they're perfect, always. It's a concept that I'm not comfortable with. Perfection is something I'm just not comfortable with. They form tubers. If you ever dig up a dahlia and you see the roots underneath, they form tubers. Theoretically, you can plant just the tuber and get another plant back. Plant after danger of frost when the ground reaches 60 degrees. This is recommending, and I'm recommending planting the plant, not necessarily the seed. Full sun, hot locations, morning shade, followed by afternoon sun is okay. So if they look like they're getting too much sun or they're getting too beat up by the sun, you can plant them in a place where you get morning sun and then get shaded out in the afternoon, which kind of goes against the 6 to 8 hours of sun rule. That have to be continuous sun. You'll notice if your plants are not getting enough sun, is they'll start reaching for it. When you reach for sun, you get thin stems. Thin stems don't hold flower heads very well, unless it's a very light flower head. So you'll grow to notice what's not enough sun. For the dahlia, the soil should be slightly acid. They like a lighter soil. So if you've got clay, which most of us around here do, add some organic matter. It can be inert organic matter or contributory organic matter in the form of compost. Inert would be in the form of peat moss or Just make sure it's something that's not gonna steal the nitrogen from the soil. Whenever anything breaks down, before it breaks down, it pulls nitrogen out of the soil. Then as it breaks down, like in your compost, it gives it back. Lightly water. For some reason, this is the recommendation for the dahlia. I'm not sure why. Lightly water in when you plant. Like you plant your tuber, you plant your plant, you lightly water it in. And then as you get new growth, you're supposed to fully water it. I'm a lazy gardener. I like to plant right before it rains. Then I don't have to do any of that. And there's your dahlias. See, they're perfect. Look at this. They're just, everything's perfect. Salvia. When you arrange flowers, you're going to need spiky stuff. You're going to need salvia, something that sticks up. For some reason, flower arrangers like spiky stuff. Remember the sage family. Another good thing to grow when you're planting for flower production or for arranging is you can grow multicolored greenery, which your sage falls into that category too. Sage is kind of, I don't know, it doesn't take any effort at all. Sage just grows and grows and grows, and so does salvia. Hummingbirds love them, bees love them. They have great color, and they're pretty much effort-free. So it's a good plant. Good for me. And there's salvia. Rudbeckia, brown or black-eyed Susan. Common name is coneflower, which is a little odd because the purple echinacea is also common name is coneflower. The purple echinacea is the state flower of Tennessee. Prefers heavy clay soil, but not soil that's going to dry out dramatically. Pests include aphids, powdery mildew, rust, smut, leaf spots, slugs, and snails. Do you know how to get rid of snails? Slugs? Beer in the ground, where you take water the ground, put a board on top of it, flip the board over the next morning, they'll all be hanging out on the underside. Then you squeeze them, squish them, and give them to your critters to eat. Now, Rudbeckia is what's growing out in all the fields right now. The little yellow flower. There's lots of different cultivars, lots of different varieties. So, there's not just one, but Rudbeckia is what you're seeing out in the field. There it is. That's just one of them. Sometimes there's not so many flower petals around them. Sunflowers. Well dug and loose soil. Soil temperature needs to be 55 to 60 degrees. Some flowers have a tap root. So if you do start them in a container, a little cup, a little pot, a little whatever, you have to be extra careful when you transplant that, because things with tap roots don't like to be transplanted. It's a good thing it's got a tap root, because with all that weight on the top, it's going to need something going down on the bottom to anchor it in the soil. Protect the seeds from rodents. We buy sunflowers to feed on rodents, and stagger your seed for continuous bloom. You can probably still plant sunflowers now, especially some of the shorter varieties, the shorter time frame varieties, not the shorter varieties and the ones that take a little less time to bloom. You're only supposed to plant sunflowers an inch deep, so they are completely available to any critter that comes by and wants to eat them. And I imagine they smell pretty good too, because I can smell sunflower seeds if I'm around them, so I know they can too. I love sunflowers. My information right now, Beatty's, you put this on the YouTube. Beatty's has their annual sunflower field available. They charge $1 a piece.
They got 2 fields this year.
Where's the other one?
One is beside the barn and one is behind the barn.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you can go get your picture taken in a sunflower field. There's nothing prettier than standing in a field of sunflowers and getting the second most pretty thing is standing in a field of cotton and getting your picture taken. But if you want to go get a nice picture taken, go stand in a field of sunflowers and have somebody take your picture. There's nothing nicer. Daisies. Daisies that's not a scientific term. There's all kinds of daisies. There's oxeye daisies, Gerber daisies, African daisies, English daisies, painted daisies, pyrethrum daisies. They are all describing a flower that looks the same or similar to other flowers, but they're not related at all. I'm talking about a shape here, not about a genus or a species. Pyrethrum daisies are the ones that you get pyrethrum organic insecticides from. Your African daisies come from Africa. They're the ones that have the iridescent center. I don't know if they're also called osteosperma. I don't know if you've seen them or not. There's a whole range of colors, but the thing that they all have in common is that the center of the daisy is somewhat iridescent. It's really attractive. English daisy is actually, I think, your oxeye daisy. Painted daisy looks like it's been painted, but it hasn't. Comes in a lot of really unusual colors. And your Shasta daisy is one that you find, it's the white classic. You find it out in the yard. It takes a lot of water. If it doesn't get the water it wants, it will take the water away from all the other plants around it. And there you are. That's the classic daisy. It's that I'm describing when I say daisy. Zinnias, magnificent flower. Susceptible to rust, susceptible to mildew, but only if they're planted extra close together, which you typically will, because if you're like me, you won't have the courage to thin. I can't thin. I'd rather have a bunch of small plants than 2 or 3 big ones. So they will get mildew, but if you plant on a slope, you can somewhat ameliorate that. As long as you have air circulation, it'll cut down your mold and your smut and your rust. Deadhead all your annuals for good flower production. We'll self-sow if undisturbed, so you could put a bed of zinnias in and just let them go. Again, you'd have to thin them if you can. Go ahead. Soil temperature of 70 to 80 degrees. So that's why you don't see zinnias until later in the year, because it takes a little longer for the soil to warm up. And it doesn't like to be transplanted. You're better to plant in place. Avoid heavy soil or overwatering. Mildew is a problem. Named after Johann Gottfried Zinn, a respected physician and botanist. He named them in the 17th. He died when he was 32, so he named them when he was about 30. I thought that was cool. There was a lot of seed trading and plant trading when the New World was discovered. A lot of plants were going back and forth across the ocean. And there we have zinnias. Snapdragons. Again, we have a spiky plant. Florists love spiky plants. Flower arrangers love spiky plants. Scientific name is antirrhinum, which means calf nose. Should have brought one. You could squeeze them and make them talk. Probably have all done that. At least I used to do a lot as a child. Common names include dog's mouth, lion's mouth, and toad's mouth. And they're a tender perennial. A tender perennial means that if it was in the perfect conditions, it would live from year to year. But because the conditions are not perfect, it's not going to survive the winter. So, but it does like it cooler than what we have in the summer. So the best time for snapdragons around here would be in the spring and then again in the fall. But they won't survive the cold of the winter. I love snapdragons. Liatris, also known as gay feather or blazing star, comes in purple and white. I love the name gay feather for a plant. Again, it's spiky. It survives in this climate. You can keep it from year to year. It will come back. Only trouble is if you mistakenly think that it's a patch of Lariapi and you pull it out because you don't want Lariapi in that spot. I do that often. It's a bulb. It's actually a corm. You have to be very careful when you plant corms in this area, or anytime when you plant corms, you have to study it very closely and make sure that you're putting the top of the plant up and the bottom of the corm down. A lot of times you can see where the dried stem came out of the top, and then you know that that's the part that goes up. But sometimes you mistake that for the bottom part that goes down, which would be the root. Win it out, plant it on its side, and then it'll just expend a little bit of. Now that's a really cool item I forgot to tell you about daffodils. If you plant a daffodil the wrong way, it will fix itself. It might not do it in 1 year, but it will pull itself upright. It will not only do that, it will eventually be at the correct depth. So even if you plant it too shallow, I was told by a guy who should know, Brent and Becky's bulbs in Gloucester, Virginia, that if you plant the daffodil too shallow, it will fix it. Which I just think is, so it's a foolproof plant. Highly recommend it. Plant in light, moderately fertile soil, so it can take not too much in food, in fertilizer. And stem rot, rust, leaf spots, and me, since it looks like a weed before flowering, it looks like a patch of weed. And gay feather and blazing star, and there's Liatris. Hydrangea, the mainstay of the florist industry and in your yards too. Now, take a lot of water. Hydrangea takes a lot of water. Likes full sun, likes a lot of water. It'll survive nicely without all that water, but it's not going to flower the way you want. And it's not going to flower the way you want if you don't give it full sun. Unless it's an oak leaf hydrangea, but even then it'll still get leggy and kind of spacey between the leaves, and you're better off just in the full sun. There's different kinds of hydrangeas. There's lace caps, which they come up and they kind of flatten out, and you get a nice airy arrangement of flowers. Most of those are bracts and sterile flowers in there. The actual fertile flowers, teeny tiny little things, which means nothing to you, I'm sure. It doesn't mean much to me either. But then you have your mop heads, which are big and round. Some of your mop heads are round, and then they have a little spike on them. All of them perfect for arranging. The mop heads maybe a little bit more than the lace caps because they're more full. Hydrangea is the one plant that you can use in flower arranging, and it not only fulfills the need for a flower, it fills the need for a greenery or a filler, because you can put the other flowers through the hydrangea and they'll hold everything in place. I know, another miscellaneous fact. Yes, ma'am?
Actually, I recently cut some hydrangea flowers and I put them before in the water, but these ones just wilted.
Cut them again. When that happens, cut them again. Did you leave them out on the counter before you put them in the water at all?
I couldn't think of anything I did, and I feel like I did cut them again and they still did. And I've done it before and they were just perfect. I just thought, did I cut them at the wrong time of day, or did I don't know what the difference was.
A lot of things, a lot of publications say that the best time to cut flowers is in the morning, but
I never had a problem before. This was a really unusual, but I had done, cut 3 or 4 of them.
were your cutters sharp?
Probably not.
Okay, if your cutter's not sharp and you crush the stem rather than cut the stem, you'll impede the ability of the flower to take up water. There are a couple flowers that when you cut it, the thing to do is put it on, and this, I'm speaking in terms, the one I'm thinking of primarily is stalk. I don't know if you all are familiar. Stalk has a slightly woody stem. Not real woody, but just slightly. And when you cut stalk, the best way to get it to take up water is to put it on its side on a counter or on a chopping block and crush it. So I'll take it and I'll use my scissors and I'll crush it, and then I'll put it in the water, and all of a sudden it's gorgeous. Just miscellaneous. Yeah. So if you crush it, and hydrangeas take so much water, even when they're cut. When you use them in arrangements, pull all those bottom leaves off.
Okay. Were you saying in that case that you should crush those stems? Or you
No,
should
I wouldn't crush
not
them,
for
but
hydrangea?
just make sure that you have a sharp cut. Even if you have to not use your cutters and just use a regular knife.
Okay. I think that's
A lot of florists use a knife instead of a scissors or cutters, and they slice it even on an angle. so that there's even more exposure. All your Japanese guys do that, well, not all of them, I can't speak for everybody, but they'll cut it on an angle, and some of your Japanese flower designers not only cut on an angle, they cut underwater, so that the stem is never exposed to the air. When the air gets into the stem, it's the xylem and phloem water transport cells seal. So no matter what you do at that point, they're sealed, they're not gonna take up water. So cut it again, and make sure that when you cut it again, you put it right in the water.
Maybe-
Some flowers take warm water, some flowers take cold water. If you cut irises and they're not open, put them in warm water. If you cut gladiolas and they're not open, put them in warm water. Lilies, put them in warm water. First, take off all the bottom leaves, because you want the moisture that's coming into that flower to go right to the flower, not to those leaves. And put them in warm water. Daffodils, tulips, put them in cold water. You want them to, if you put a tulip in warm water, it'll just open up to the point where it's like this, and that looks like it's somewhat dead. Yes, ma'am?
Would you speak to drying hydrangeas?
All you gotta do is, you can leave them on the bush and they'll dry. It depends on the species that you got, depends on the variety of hydrangea that you got, how well it will dry. Some of them go brown. If you're designing a floral arrangement for somebody who's into primitives, they don't mind the brown hydrangea. But I have one species in my yard, I don't have a lot in my yard, mind you. But I have this one called Invincible Spirit. Comes out a light pink. Flower head's not huge, but it dries magnificent. Yeah, or just hang them up. Cut them, hang them up. Hang them upside down.
Brown bag.
You can. Just hang them up. They dry incredibly. And then if you want, if you need another color, or you don't like whatever they paint, try spray painting them if they're not what you want. You can spray paint hydrangeas with a light paint, not a heavy, not a paint your outdoor furniture paint, but just a light paint. You can paint them with a light spray paint, any color you want. They handle it beautifully. Carnations too. Yes, ma'am.
I have two hydrangea plants on the east side of my house. One's in a raised bed, one's a few feet away, just in the ground. One has never bloomed, one doesn't bloom every year, and I've only got so many. It gets sun till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It gets first thing sun in the morning till about 2 in the afternoon, and then it starts getting shade. Do I need to move them, or maybe I'm not watering them enough?
I'd try fertilizer first.
Okay.
I'd try a full spectrum fertilizer. And you're getting 6 hours of sun, at least.
Well,
Almost 7 or 8, almost 8. Which one is the one in the raised bed? Is that the one that's blooming the best?
That's the one that has bloomed before. It didn't bloom at all this year, but I have had a few blooms on it. The one down in the ground, I've never seen a bloom on it.
What do the leaves look like? Do they look healthy?
They look healthy, especially the one in the raised bed. I mean, just big green, very, very healthy looking plants. Just not getting any.
Are they growing?
Yes, because the one that's in the ground, they got so big, they were side by side in the raised bed, and they got so big, I moved one and put it nearby in the ground. So yes, they're growing, they just aren't blooming.
That's interesting. Why don't you write your name or your email down, and we'll look that up and try to get you a little bit more comprehensive answer
Okay.
than me. I'm not a hydrangea expert by any stretch. I'm not an
Not
expert
either.
by any. Being a master gardener, the thing I know the most is how little I know. Okay, the more I learn, the less I know. So we'll try for you. Yes, ma'am.
It sounds like my hydrangea used to get enough sun, but now my oak tree has grown tremendously, so now it's not getting enough sun and it stopped blooming, or very few blooms. So I've been thinking about moving it, but I'm worried do they move well, or she sounded like she moved hers?
You probably lose all of your blossoms for next year. A lot of the hydrangeas blossom on last year's growth.
Well, I'm okay with that, but it would survive just.
In the fall, not in the summer.
Okay.
Don't be, I hate to intersperse with personal stories, but I have a neighbor that just moved into a new house and a new yard. And he proceeded to plant probably 35 6-foot trees this last month. And I'm like, oh no. If he just waited 3 more months, he'd have been good to go. I mean, I just felt bad. But no, don't plant anything now. It's too hot.
Hydrangeas are pretty, hardy.
Yes, ma'am.
You can take one that's come up and stick it in the ground.
Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna say, I had a hydrangea, I don't know what kind it was, it was pink, it would have just one bloom for the last, I think, 3 years. This year, it has 5 or 6 blooms, it's beautiful, it's always had healthy foliage. I don't know what's different this year, I think we had more water.
Yes, ma'am. We
I
had
think
a
I-
lovely spring.
Yeah, I think that might be, and then I think I fertilized it more.
Yes, ma'am. So try the
I have
fertilizer
not
first,
fertilized it, no.
and you won't know till next year if you're successful.
That's all right.
Okay. But when you do when you do transplant it, if you do transplant it, fall is best, early spring is second best, summer, no. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of fertilizer do you think is best for hydrangeas?
I would just use 10-10-10 if it was me. Compost would be grand if you could scratch it in. I'm not a good fertilizer person. I'll ask the audience. I'll ask the other people who fertilize. I garden by trial. If it lives, it was good. And if it doesn't, I'll put something else there. Okay. Okay, Miss Hinkle, do you use fertilizer?
Yeah.
Okay, she
And
uses
compost.
fertilizer and compost simultaneously?
No,
Okay.
okay, what I do, I'm mainly a vegetable gardener, but out in the thing, you know, you use these special, like rose foods where you put it around, and that's fertilizer. So I'll dig that in and put that in, and I'll do it maybe twice a year,
Okay.
in the spring and fall. And in the garden, I use mainly compost, but at the beginning of the year, I dig in 10-10-10, and then I let that be it, and the rest of it's compost, so I combine.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Hydrangeas can be adjusted for color, only if they're colored to begin with. You can't adjust a white hydrangea and make it blue or pink. You can only adjust a light blue hydrangea to be more blue or more pink. Same with the pinks. And the way to do that is use an acid fertilizer to bump it down to blue. Use an alkali fertilizer to bump it up to pink. It's kind of like chemical torture, but I mean, roses. I could not have this little talk without talking about roses. I am not a rose gardener. They're too much trouble for me. Do I have any Master Gardener rose gardeners in the room? Okay,
I used to.
okay. Were they too much trouble for you? You like
It's a lot of work,
It's a lot of
but
work.
I like it.
Okay.
I used to have almost 100 bushes.
Okay. Did you put them in the ground or did you
Yes.
keep them in pots? Okay.
I put them in the ground.
And how did you take care of them?
You know,
Fertilizer?
No,
Constantly.
I do vermiculture, so I put a lot of,
Yes.
I vermiculture my yard waste and my kitchen waste, so.
Okay. Everybody familiar with vermiculture? Okay. Oh, and you know, roses are incredible. They're beautiful.
They are a lot of work, I have
It's a lot of
about 4
work.
plants, but
That had almost every day.
my mother had 100 rose bushes, and when she got to be about 87, she just said, I can take that one.
Did she have them in the ground or did she have them in pots?
Long bed, huge bed. And if you let them go, they get kind of leggy and ugly, and, cause I let mine go a little bit this summer.
You have to spray, you have to cut, you have to spray.
I used to have tea roses, and then I got into the knockout roses. And I had 2 of the knockout roses that got because I didn't prune them, but I liked it. I had them like 8 feet tall by 5-6 feet.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
the rose disease got them. And I lost every rose on my property.
It went from your knockouts to your regular roses?
Yes, because I had 13 miniature roses in a bed, and it eventually got all of them. Even though I started spraying when I realized, because
Is
when
there
you
any
spray,
spray that's effective against
no,
that?
not against it, but you're spraying for the insect that transfers it. So I started spraying the healthy ones, hoping they weren't already infected, to try and keep. The last one that survived was one on the other side of the house from all the others. But I lost all of them. The only rose I have now is one in a pot. It just wasn't worth the trouble of trying to put it back.
Yeah, no, I love roses dearly, and the scent is spectacular, but I'm limited as to time, and I'm lazy. I'm a lazy gardener. So, you all know the rules for roses: full sun, well-drained soil, lots of organic matter, planted in autumn or early spring, and cultivars are numerous and able to fill any need. The section in my gardening books on roses are like this. The American Guide to Horticulture section on roses is this thing. So, there's your roses. Greenery. When you're doing flower garden or flower arranging from your home garden, you're gonna want to use greenery. Stuff with a coating, a waxy coating on the leaf is best. Camellia, Photinia, your myrtle you can use out of the woods. You can use euonymus, boxwood, holly. And one of the reasons you're using greenery in a floral bouquet in a vase is to hold the flowers in place. It's not just to accent the flowers. You're making a grid work, a frame that you slide the flower stems down into to hold them in place. That's how florists do it. That greenery, it's not to make it pretty, though it does. It's to hold everything else in place. And ferns are good too. Sticks. I know that sounds odd. We use a lot of sticks too. Curly willow is great. That's Salix tortuosa. Hairy lauder walking stick is great because it's got that curly stuff. Also, birch sticks. They're straight. They give that same effect. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
On the peonies, warm water opens or closes?
Warm water opens those puppies right up.
Okay.
And cold water closes them. You can go back and forth all day. You can have fun with your preschoolers. Any other questions? Any questions about master gardeners? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in the room. Oh, well, thank you for being patient listening to me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to be doing